Hey, let's get underway. This is a panel, because there's more than one of us. Hey! Hey! Anyway, so thank you very much for coming along. Now, one of the things that I wanted to do with this B-Sides was really kind of help to not push so much, but encourage and give a space in which we can get students in with lots of professionals to make them meet and to make, everything from careers to drinking games happen, And the aim that we've got is to offer up a panel of the title, How the Hell Did I End Up in Infosec? And I'm going to go down some of my wonderful speakers, and I want you to give me a little line about yourselves. It can be a couple of lines for you, Matt, I think. One about yourself, one about your beard, and how you feel about being, hottest man on Bristol or something.
Level 5 Linux user, even the beard matters.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to go down. We'll start with you then, Matt. This is Matt Hall, who works at Sec1 Limited, and I'll say no more.
Hello everyone. My name is Matthew Hall. This is my shirt. I'm a team leader, various different roles and responsibilities at Sec1. Pen tester, consultant, DFIR, exploit dev, wrote a load of Metasploit modules. You may be able to search me on the internet. I've been told I have an internet reputation. I don't know if it's a good or bad one. And I've been in Infosec for nigh on 17, 18 years, professionally. I started out when I was about 14, 15 in the sort of wares, hacking, phreaking scene. And I like to get people involved in Infosec.
And now we have, do you give a Vicky Joe or Vicky?
So I tend to go by Vicky. I'm Vicky Joe on Twitter.
Yeah.
I currently work doing freelance Infosec consultancy. My background is sysadmin, network engineer, and I've worked my way up through that.
Yeah.
Before Infosec was its own standalone role, it was part of doing other things. I've been doing that for over 17 years. I've worked abroad, I've worked for really big companies, worked for really small companies. So a bit of everything.
And lastly we have Nico.
I'm Nicodemo Gawronski. I'm a penetration tester and freelancer. I work as a bug bounty hunter full time now. I used to work for Sec1 with this guy.
I'm this guy.
Yeah.
I didn't get a mention.
Sorry. I started my career in Infosec about 5 years ago, so quite recently. And now I just opened my my company, and that's what I'm doing. So,
My name's Mark, and you're not going to do that anymore. So my name's Mark. I am a security researcher at Security Research Labs GmbH. I used to work at Sec1 as well with these two. And I have been in Infosec for, professionally, maybe I think it would push 4, possibly 5 years now. But I've been messing around with stuff and hacking stuff since I was a teenager. So I kind of went through an unusual kind of phase of being a violinist first. So hence the question of how the hell did I end up in Infosec kind of came about. So let's start with that. Let's start with the question of how the hell did you end up in Infosec? Matt, go for it. You mentioned wares.
Yeah, so I'm fairly old.
No, bits of you aren't haunted, you're not that old.
I'm 37 now. So I was born in 1980, and I grew up, and from a young age was interested in computers. I had my Spectrums and Ataris, and when I at school, had a BBC Micro, running Aircon, and sort of learned BBC Basic there. When I got to about 12, 13, 14, started getting an IBM PC, 286, 386, running Windows 3.1.
Who's not heard of 3.1? Yeah, we've all heard of it. It's fine.
Got promoted up to Windows 95.
Woo! Yeah, represent.
And then looked at the computer and I was like, oh my god, is this what a computer can do? And like just running solitaire and stuff like that. I was like, this is it. So I ended up like moving into the Linux world and getting involved in that sort of side of things, but at the same time like, oh look, there are these things called IRC and there's people on IRC who are talking about this thing called hacking and sort of getting interested in that way. So did some fairly dubiously legal activities during my early teens, and then got to 16, 17, getting asked at school, by your careers counsellor, what do you want to do in life? Well, I don't know. What do you think? Go into biology. Like, sure, yeah. I love computing, and computing wasn't a choice back then. I was in Infosec before it was cyber. And computers were a tool that everyone used in your 9 major categories of, English, maths, science stuff.
So when did you realise you were a hacker then? Like, what was the moment you went, oh, actually, this is me? Because,
The first time I realised it was when I went to a conference. If any of you are that old, and back then I went to a computer security conference in Blackpool called DNSCon. Data Network Security Conference. Woo! Yay! A couple of DNSCon guys here. Woo! And I just met all these great people and absolutely was in the thick of it, loved it. I was like, you know what? This is something I want to do for the rest of my life. Yeah. At that conference, I met a group of guys who were starting an Infosec firm based in Bradford. Said to those guys, I'm doing this like medical microbiology course. I don't know why my teacher said it'd be a good idea. Can I have a job when I get out? And I said, yeah, sure. So pissed off the last couple of years drinking and socialising, and university is a great experience, great life experience. Put me in a fair amount of debt.
I think
and then
yeah.
Finished uni, went and joined this Infosec firm. And sort of started learning the actual professional ropes from there, not pirating software and creating
So
cracks.
actually doing pen tests and doing...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mostly offense, mixed with defensive work, sysadmin, firewalling, stuff
All that
like
kind
that.
of stuff. And now here you are as...
And that was 12 years
Yeah.
there. And then after that 12 years, I moved purely into an offensive testing role.
Yeah. And now here you are today.
Yeah.
Lovely. How about you, Vicky? How did you sort of wend your way towards being a hacker? And what happened to you that went, yeah, I do this?
I've come in from a much more traditional background, so I've spent lots of time playing with computers at school, so I'm same age as this guy. So, except most of the schools I was at had RM Nimbuses, so it was Nimbus Basic for me.
Hey, Nimbus people in.
And I did, so 4th year work experience, what do they call it now, year 10 or something.
Year 10, I think, yes.
So I went off and I did something that was not IT, and my mum wasn't happy with that for reasons. Something was the effect of, your dad wasn't in work a lot with that role. Were muttered, and you spend all your time on the computer. So I bought myself a second-hand Amiga, lots of stacks of those really big PC World books, the big magazine, Wired, subscription to Wired, which most people don't think is that normal for a 14-year-old girl. I'm hoping it's becoming more normal now. So she said, look, why don't you come and I'll see if I can arrange work experience where I work. It's an engineering company, we've got a small IT department, and they're really good. So went there first summer, they were running mainframe, and I was doing a bit of desktop support and doing things like backups, and showed me the firewall and that sort of thing. Went back to school, I did GCSE computing or whatever it was called then. Got told off during my mocks for putting things like, how would you secure things? And I put firewall and antivirus, and I got no marks. So I said, well, what is wrong with this? It's a good answer. But how do you know about it? It's not on the curriculum.
Oh.
So my A-level choices were all very kind of, I would say, standard for doing engineering, which was maths and physics and computing. And I went off down to Sussex to study engineering. I'm originally from Lancashire. And that's an intense course. It's getting towards 40 hours a week, lectures and labs. And I was working part-time. I was doing retail sales. I was selling PCs. Was my part-time job. So I dropped out of uni after the first year because I'd had that work experience of working 2 summers at that company. So probably clocked up a good 3 months worth, just over 2 summers. I had the confidence to be able to say, I know I can do the job. And in fact, after my first summer there, they'd actually hired a permanent member of staff. So
That's for security, is it?
no, that is just for IT. So
Yeah.
I've come in the very traditional IT route of sysadmin, and a lot of companies I've worked for haven't had security roles. And I think a lot of those companies that I've worked for in the past still don't have a security team or a security manager. A few of them have gone bust over the years as well. It does happen. But it was always part of being, a sysadmin network engineer. And then I've specialised more. I've done some part-time study since. There are a couple of good part-time postgraduate courses, part-time foundation degree, that sort of thing. I would say it's been a specialised IT path, but I've done a mix of web dev as well along the way. So I've worked for a SaaS provider, so I've worked alongside a lot of developers and done bits with sort of basic app scan type pen test tools, but now I tend to focus more on there's bits of governance and risk and compliance and architecture and engineering, and I think a lot of the companies do like you to have a broad understanding of that. So I am a CISSP. I know some people here probably think that that's a dirty word and aren't big fans of security qualifications. I know also the CIEH doesn't have a great rep among some people. Either. I don't have that. I think security qualifications have value, but that's mine. That's my routine. So I tend to work with a lot of enterprises, and that was a few people might have seen my talk earlier where I talked about plumbers versus rock stars. I'm very much a blue teamer. If I had to pick a team.
But you've both done some blue team then, and do you find that helps your kind of security knowledge? Then, if you say, because you now do the offensive stuff, so was that a choice, or did you find that you do more security on that side, or how does it work for you?
I think blue team's hard.
Hard as in it's thankless, or hard as in it's...
kind of thankless. Defense is difficult.
Yes.
Yeah, I think they've got different issues. So blue team, there's dealing with company politics, there's getting budgets for things, it's getting the business to understand why you're needed as a function.
Yeah.
There's a lot of sort of basic IT work, and some of it does sit with non-security teams, or they're now called security teams, whereas in the past they weren't. So I think it depends.
They weren't cut out. Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Sorry. We'll now carry on to Nico. So how did you get in here? And when did you realise you were a hacker?
I only got invited up 5 minutes ago because Steve.
Sorry, I'm a bit nervous. I didn't know I was going to be here. Well, my story is a bit different than yours. When I was back in high school, I'm from Italy, first of all. I studied classics, so I was studying philosophy, ancient Greek, Latin.
So not a technical degree?
No, technical, no. Of course, I loved computers, video games, like pretty much everybody. After high school, I had no idea what to do with my life. So I decided to study chemistry because I like the idea about studying chemistry in uni. Yeah. So I applied, started, did a year and a half, and then I realized that it wasn't going well for me. So I decided, okay, I like computers. this is a hobby for me, but maybe I can do more with it than just keeping it as a hobby. So I googled, I looked for universities that were offering some degrees in computer science, and I found one in Scotland that was doing digital forensics, ethical hacking, and penetration testing. I had no idea what these things were, but I like the idea of it. So
Sounded good.
You'd watch CSI Cyber.
Yeah. It was,
And went, that's me.
it was cyber enough. So
You'd seen Hackers and Angelina Jolie sold it for you.
yeah. So I applied. I got accepted and moved to Scotland in 2010. And since then, I started studying subjects related to computer science, like creating databases, creating websites, digital forensics. Just a course. There was another course about penetration testing. So it was there was nothing really specific to hacking. Just one module in 4 years of studying. During my second year of uni, I started thinking, okay, I'm going to have a degree, but I'm not really learning enough. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to find a job. So I started. I thought, okay, let's pick up a book about programming, some programming language that is used in the industry. Let's learn this programming language and let's write some tools or scripts, something that can teach me something more than uni. So I started working with Python, and I contacted a company in Italy that is called Deft Linux. They developed a Linux distribution for digital forensics. So I asked them, guys, can I do anything for you even for free? I'm a student. I want to learn something, and I am not really sure what to do. So can you give me anything to do? And at first they said, well, we have to translate our manual from Italian to English. And I said, guys, my English is not is far from perfect, but yeah, I can do that. It's not related to really to what I want to do, but okay, let's do it. So I translated this manual. The translation is horrible, but yeah, they were happy with it. And then I said, okay, now I finished this manual. Do you have anything else for me to do? And one of these guys is a police officer. Said, we actually need a tool to analyze Skype databases. So I said, okay, I have no idea how to do this, but I can give it a try. So I started writing this tool while I was still in uni. And at the end of it, I managed to develop the script. They were happy about it's working. I kept writing and writing. And by the end of the second year of uni, our professor told us that Sec 1 was looking for interns. And she asked the CVs of the best students in our class, and I was one of the best, yeah. Out of not many students, but yeah, whatever. So
Everyone send their CVs.
yeah, so I wrote in my CV that I was developing in Python, working with Skype, and luckily enough, Sec 1's programming language is Python, so they liked the idea of someone that is a student but that knows Python or knows something about Python. So they offered me a job, an internship, and that's how I started. Before joining Sec 1, I didn't know much about penetration testing. So we are talking about 4 years ago. So I met these guys, and yeah, I really love the job because it's fun. You can.
Just don't let you again.
I thought the title of this talk, how do I get out of Infosec?
So yeah, I really like the job because you do things that are potentially illegal, but they are not illegal. They are legal. They are paid to do it, and it's fun. It's like being in a movie or like playing a.
Do you feel James Bond? Do you?
No, not quite, but it's fun.
But
It's
ever
fun.
since there, you got yourself in the top 5, top 10.
Top 10.
Top 10.
Yeah, when I joined Sec 1, I started learning a lot of things. But then I had to go back to uni. So I thought, I'm going back to uni, and uni is very slow. They're teaching me interesting things, but it's still too slow for me. I'm not learning enough. So I decided to start working with Backcrowd, HackerOne, to get some more websites to test. And by the end of the third year of uni, I was in the top 10 of Backcrowd. So I really liked it. It was an amazing learning experience because it's testing for a penetration testing company is different. It's very different. It's not like bug bounty hunting. You have to use different techniques to find targets. You have to be faster than the competition. You have a lot of competition. So I learned different things in the doing two things, and then back in May, I quit my job at Sec 1, and now I'm working as a freelancer and bug bounty hunter.
Yeah.
Full time.
Full time. Nice. So, we're keeping this quite short, by the way, in terms of like actual questions. So it's not going to ramble on and on, because I want to get a flavour for how people have been able to get from where they started in philosophy or in microbiology, or even if you've been always interested in computers from a very young age, which how you can get into the industry and how you kind of end up and find your niche. And one of the things that you've kind of said, certainly yourselves, has been, and you kind of touch on this, which is meeting people.
Yes.
Coming together.
And this is a point I'd like to make, Mark.
Okay.
Everyone here has come to the con. You're already interested in Infosec. What you need to do is speak to the people that aren't here. So there are several representatives from Leeds Ethical Hacking Society, probably Sheffield and other universities around the area. And for those who come to conferences like this, in the same way I did, I met people at conferences in industry in order to get into the industry. If you are here and you're not in industry and you want to, this is where you're going to meet those people. Your friends at university, your friends in other IT fields who aren't here, who do want to move into it, you need to tell them to get out into the community, really. It's very well and good going out, getting your OSCP, OSCE, going to get some certificates. Certificates you can brute force. You can just take the exams.
That's an expensive script.
It's an expensive script.
Put that out there.
But you can. As Vicky said, there are some qualifications which are not particularly seen as great. I mean, I have CIS, I have CEH. It was very, very long ago when I got them.
We both think that's it.
Yeah, thank you. But one of the questions that I think is being posited here is, what do employers look for in CVs, people wanting to move into the industry? And it's engagement, it's interest, it's motivation. And an employer's not going to look at your CV if you wanted to move into Infosec, where you just gone to university, coasted through a 3-year course and come out and not motivated yourself to do anything other than just go to and sit in a seat. You need to engage in the community, be part of it, either just attend or contribute. Contributions, obviously.
Do you find the same thing from your point of view, Vicky, as a kind of more consultancy kind of side? Do you find that the engagement with the community is something you value?
Yeah, and so I got into it because I was working for a development company in terms of finding that there were these community conferences.
Yeah.
So I'm based down in Brighton, and there's a big developer community down there. And as I was working in a systems manager role, so I was supporting all the systems running quite a lot of websites, and some of those were revenue generating. And it was, well, what are the devs going to come to me with, saying, well, I want to run this particular framework, or we want to move to that, or we want to try something new, or things like CI were just starting to come in, rather than doing manual deployments and that sort of thing. So for me, it was about being better to provide what the business needed and what my colleagues needed. And I think that's the thing with doing enterprise security, is there to support the business.
Yeah.
So I started going to meetups, going to bar camps. There's a couple of people here that I recognise from 10 plus years ago, and that's how I started going to community conferences. And I've also been a hiring manager in roles, and it's looking for that a little bit more. I mean, if people are coming straight out of university, it is things like, have you had a side project or summer job, or even if it hasn't been IT related, even if it's been something like working in a shop, about how they relate to people. And I did interview people who'd been on lots of courses. I think they'd been put through them by some government scheme. And it was, well, you could have maybe done a bit more with that. So I do look for that. In terms of certificates, I do think the CISP is valuable, because in an enterprise environment, it is so broad quite often, and particularly with small teams, you're having to look at lots of different things. You don't get to be as focused or specialised or as deeply techie as you might like. I mean, I'd like to be a lot more hands-on and techie in some ways, but at the same time, I looked at it and said, well, that's what organisations need. And so there is the opportunity to do different things, and that was what I was talking about earlier. Was there are all these roles that aren't just pen testing or reversing. There are all these other opportunities to do things that might fit better with people's skill sets and what they're comfortable with. So that might be, you're doing programming and you've gone into being really great at pen testing. But for somebody else, it might be, well, they'd be happier doing looking at SDLC and that sort of thing, and looking at the processes around the development life cycle and managing that sort of thing.
I remember when I wanted to make the full move. So a little bit about my background is that I was actually working in a software company when I was like 18, and I was writing software for the NHS, which might explain a few. Let us say about that better.
I'm not going to say anything about WannaCry.
However, that was long ago, and then I kind of stopped that and went and did the arty thing and went to be a violinist, which is so in some ways it's much more fun, and other ways it's much less fun, because you're always playing someone else's music at the request of another person, usually under the tempo of a fourth person, So it was kind of, it felt actually, even though it's very artistic, it was very, very quite constraining, and I couldn't stop kind of hacking stuff. But I always thought you just go to prison. That was my thought. Like, I was told from when I was very young, when I was 15, if you do this, you're going to prison.
It's never too late.
No, that's very true.
Don't admit anything, you're on camera.
But no, it's like, it was just the stigma of it. I was just learning how to program in my room and like sort of building Linux servers and trying to do cool stuff with what we now call analytics or big data. But I was just calling, getting lots of servers to act as one, and in Beowulf clusters, and I kind of remember trying to make the transition back into tech, having a music degree. Right? You get this, it's like, you're a violinist, what are you doing here? And it's kind of like, so talking about like extra, I remember my CV kind of had this. So about 10 years ago, I did this tech stuff. And I remember having to sort of include a portfolio, which is probably an extreme example. But I actually included a small, like, snippets of code that I'd written and ideas that I have of more code and other bits and bobs. And that actually was the better talking point in my interviews, you know. So just to get to sort of maybe see things from a different angle, what would you not do if you wanted to get into Infosec? Start with you, Nico. What would you not do? So we've just said, oh, come to cons and do these things, but what would you not do?
Hard question.
Vicky, Matt?
Well, don't stop learning. Don't stop asking questions. One thing that was very important for me when I joined Sec1 was asking a lot of questions.
Yeah.
Even if there were new questions, like you feel stupid asking them.
Yeah, I suppose
it's very important never to stop asking the questions, because you have people in your team and they can help you learning, become better tester and better at what you're doing. So
which lends itself to this morning's talk from FC and Jess about fear. And basically imposter syndrome. I find myself asking questions all the time, even after many years, and still Google stuff like Andy Gill was saying. Don't be afraid. Hi, Andy. Don't be afraid of knowing where your capabilities end. Where your limitations are.
Don't be under the assumption you know it all.
Don't be.
And I think
the Dunning-Kruger effect.
The thing of don't do is I do sometimes see people online who are, should we say, overconfident or overly opinionated. So
do you find that they're also trying to play buzzword bingo on LinkedIn?
Not necessarily. I mean, there are some very, very talented people, but they don't necessarily understand why people are working in the way they're working. It's I think you should be working in this way. Why aren't you doing? I mean, patching's the big one. Is people say things like, I don't understand why people don't patch. Why don't you just patch? And it's like, because sometimes the business will tell you that you can't patch.
Yes.
Sometimes you literally haven't got the people or the technology to be able to do that.
Well, there was that example recently, wasn't there, with Meltdown, where the patch itself triggered lots of AVs. AVs broke or something, was it?
Well, the patch itself caused a lot of shutdowns.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so there were lots of business cases there for not patching a vulnerability that was headlines.
And you know, Andy Gill spoke earlier. We've all had a lot of rockstar, threaty, vulnerability threat type things with
logo,
stuff
website,
like the logo, website,
catchy name,
and
theme songs,
and the industry being either very vulnerability centric or very threat centric, but not very risk centric.
Yeah, and also, do you find maybe a bigger question for you two is more, do you find that people either get blinkered out of realizing the context, like a security context? Do you find that that's something that people don't know about, or do you find that like threat models and attack surfaces and that kind of thing?
It can seem quite siloed, so I go to lots of different events, and I come to things like this, and then I go to OWASP type events and sort of DevSec type events, and then I go to things like ISC squared meetups, and there are lots of really good people in the industry who are really open, but even with enterprise IT people, you can get people who are like, who's this person turning up in a t-shirt? What does she know about security sort of thing? Or you're in an applications team, you're not in a security team, therefore you don't know anything about security.
Yes, you couldn't possibly know about security.
No.
It's not in your job description.
You've not done it in a previous organisation or life, so therefore you can't possibly know anything about it. So I think people do can get quite blinkered even within their own organisations as well. I mean, you do get that thing anyway between what project managers and developers are trying to achieve and what you might be trying to do as a security team as well, because they're trying to deliver to their customers, which is the business, and you're trying to do your risk management stuff and keep the business safe, and there's blinking in that, so that's the sort of thing that you see politics-wise.
Yeah, in terms of the internal mechanics of a large machine.
Yeah,
like a
and I think with some enterprise people, they don't understand what security researchers do, and why
Cost
pen
problems, mostly.
testers cost what they cost, and
Yeah.
what value do they add, and,
Yeah.
and how much work and knowledge people have and are bringing to that, and the benefit that is.
You can really tell, though, I found with a pen test, like, some people just want the pen test because it's a compliance thing, it's a tick box, and then, you know, my report's holding up a door somewhere, you know, it's a very handy doorstop usually. And then it gets completely ignored, whereas other people, like, want to engage you, they want the consultancy, they want the wisdom and the knowledge and that. So it kind of comes down to sort of, like, so more closing comments, just to sort of wrap a few things up, because I've still got to close the conference apparently. So if you could give some advice to noobs or people who want to get into it, people who are maybe greener, like technologically wise, but maybe green to security, what advice would you give them? Let's go from you, Matt.
Well, as I said previously, show motivation and interest in security as a thing. Infosec, both offensive and defensive, is a very growing industry, and I don't want to poo-poo anyone's particular ideas. There are people who move into the industry purely motivated by financial gain, and if you're not there to help secure the internet, make the world a better place, and make the internet more secure, then I don't really want to know you.
Cool. And you, Vicky?
Might sound harsh, but you know, it's the truth.
I think just be open to other opportunities in organisations. It might be that you want to work for a particular organisation for whatever reason that is, like the brand, or because their business ethics are aligned with your personal motivations. So, you know, there are people I know who've gone deliberately into the public sector because they want to do a public good with the skills that they have, and it might be a case of going into not a security role, or not a role that you want to begin with, and seeing if you can then develop and work for an organisation who can lead you down that path. And I think be open to other IT roles. So a lot of organisations are still green, they still don't have their own security teams. When I've worked with juniors, if there's the opportunity there, I always like if they can start out on something like help desk and get a feel for who their end users are, and what the business does, and then ideally, if they can, work through different areas of IT and get an understanding of what ops teams do, or, you know, systems teams need to talk to the DBAs, and depends on how big the organisation.
The graphic network of things.
Yeah, or it could be that, you know, people start out in a development role and move into doing something more that's more security developer type role, or security architecture, or solutions architecture type role. So I think consider all opportunities basically.
Don't just decide on one thing. Keep it.
Yeah, because it changes. It does change so much. I mean, there's lots of technologies that I've worked with before that aren't used, like Novell and Token Ring and Solaris. You're probably all kind of going like, what? So I think it is just be open to learning and change, and accept it's going to change. And I think security roles will change again. Yeah. So.
Yeah. And lastly, Nico, for someone who maybe wants to do the more kind of bug bounty thing, what can you tell people maybe to do to? What could you say to encourage them?
I can say there are at least 6 bug bounty platforms, and they are expanding. I think HackerOne has given out I think about 10 millions in bounties.
Nice. Yeah.
And they want to get to 100 millions by the end of next year, something like that.
Wow, yeah.
Something like that, if I remember correctly. So there is a lot of money involved. There are a lot of companies that are going towards bug bounties. There is a big community. I met a lot of bug hunters at conferences. So I suggest to I released some slides about bug bounty platforms, so you can have a read of them, and you can see the differences between the platforms, how you start with them, and for sure you need to have some knowledge, some skills. So probably you should study how to hack into web applications. So that's the start for sure for bug bounties, web applications. There are of course mobile application testing, infrastructure testing, hardware hacking. But I would suggest to start with web applications, and there are many resources online.
Familiarity with Burp and the tools around it as well.
And if you have questions and you just go on Twitter, and there are a lot of people that will give you good suggestions, or that will help you learning. Perfect. So for sure, Twitter, and ask questions.
And lastly, I'm going to make my final comment, which is actually not aimed at students at all. It's aimed at you guys, the researchers. If you're going to give something a name and a logo and a website, give it a bloody theme tune as well. I'd like to thank Matt Hall, Vicky Joe, and Nicodemo Gawronski. Thank you very much.
Cheers, Mark.